Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sharon Burstein. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 13 of The Butterfly Effect. It's all about the YWCA, and we are having a great show today. But before we get to our very special guest, I want to talk to you a little bit about the sponsor of The Butterfly Effect here for the YWCA. It's Pursuit Lending. And the great thing about Pursuit Lending is that they're based out of Albany and they are 100% vested in helping businesses and people trying to get the most out of what your vision and innovation is to make it real. So if you are looking for money for your business, please go to www.pursuitlending.com. Now, this is an empowerment series where volunteer hosts such as myself interview inspiring women from throughout the Capital Region. That doesn't mean we are based here, but many of the people, just like our guest today, is pretty much a global person, and she is simply amazing. And the YWCA is just so great about empowering and building women up. And everybody needs that and erasing racism. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to an amazing woman that I have had the privilege of knowing for a long time. Her name is Elisa Quinn, and she is so much engaged in our community here throughout the Capital Region with all the things that she has done. I'm always astounded by everything that Elisa Quinn does for herself, her community, her family. She has been and is probably the best financial guru in the whole Capital Region and well beyond. She's been working and advising people in the financial industry for 3 decades. She's a vice president and has been very engaged. So I know I have learned so much from Elisa Quinn in so many ways. So right now, I'd like to give it up and welcome Elisa Quinn to the Butterfly Effect. Thank you, Elisa. Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I'm truly excited to be here this afternoon.
And I have been so excited about this interview for the last few weeks, and I've done several others, but this one is just, you're so awe-inspiring. And what I love is it's not just what you do, it's how you do it, the graceful way in how you always have time for other people and community. And I think that is just such a part of the wonderful, beautiful character of who you are. You're gorgeous outside, you're gorgeous inside. So tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would, please.
I'd be delighted to. Thank you so much, Sharon. So just my professional background was that I grew up here in Schenectady, New York, and I was about a block from Union College. My dad was a professor there. So for me, it was always the dream to be able to go to Union College. And right outside the fall term of my freshman year, I had started off as a mechanical engineer. And I was privileged enough to get an internship with a president who had retired from General Electric Company, and it was a machine shop, and I was doing electrical wiring and soldering and architectural drawing. And at the end of the internship, he basically plopped down a mechanical clock, and he said, "Your job for the day is to fix this." And truly at that moment in time, I knew I was truly not cut out to be an engineer. And so even though I was great in math and science, it really wasn't what was an inspiration for me. So I went back to Union College and combined it with economics. And so I ended up graduating with a dual degree. It was called industrial economics. And so right out of college, I actually was in the computer industry, right when personal computers were brand new. And I started off in retail sales and then went on to the corporate side. And then I had the good privilege to meet a gal who worked for Prudential Beige at the time. And she was in the Business and Professional Women's Club, of many of which I have supported here in the Capital Region. And she said, "You would be really great at what I do." And I said, "I have no idea what you do." I truly didn't. I was 24 years old. My parents weren't necessarily big investors. And so it was a learning curve for me. And so I truly interviewed with all of the major brokerage firms at that point in time. Only one was willing to take a chance on me. And the gentleman said, after 7 interviews, We would love to
Wow.
hire you. That's the good news. The bad news is I'm leaving. And so the one person that was willing to take a chance on me truly was leaving the capital region. And he said, there's going to be a gentleman that'll come in. You're going to love him. So it was an auspicious beginning, but I indeed had a fabulous, fabulous first manager, and he truly was an incredible mentor for me for the first part of my career.
I
Fast forward.
love that you talked about mentors right now
Okay.
because he was a mentor. Was there somebody who inspired you before he did?
So that is a great question. So I will always say that both of my parents were tremendous inspiration for me personally and professionally. And with my dad being a college professor, education was always very important to our family. And so I found inspiration from both the academic side and clearly my dad used to share with me, he goes, Elisa, you can do anything. And he would say, even be president. And I said, a president of what? And he goes, anything that you want. And so it truly was that underlying faith and support for all four children in our family. And my mother in the same exact way. She was absolutely inspiration. I think of her as a Renaissance woman that was able to do everything from working inside the home, from having a professional career of her own. She did silk screening, artistic design. She was a bookkeeper for my dad's important psychoanalyst business that he ran outside of the home. She had real estate where she was the landlord and managed apartment complexes from afar that her mother had. She cut our hair. She was, basically did everything to raise a family and was an equal partner with my dad. So I truly had an incredible foundation right from the very, very beginning. And that to me is an incredible foundation. So they were both my inspiration for sure.
And that is so key. I mean, having parents who are great mentors is great and inspiration. Sometimes we get them from other places. I want to, while we're talking up mentors, I know I've had mentors. Mine weren't necessarily my parents. I talk about it all the time when I'm speaking. And I talk about my paternal grandmother being a key influencer. But one of the things that I am very much on, and I know you are too, is just as we've had mentors behind us, we have mentors now, and we need to be mentors. So the more that we can be mentors, and everybody who is watching this right now, this is a really key thing. Just because as we have had them, whether they're your parents, whether they are neighbors, people around you, you need to be a mentor. And the importance of mentoring is really helping because that really is building our next generation of leaders. So, talk to me a little bit about how you like to be a mentor with what you do in your life right now, Elisa.
So I think that's a wonderful question. One of the things that I did, just looping back to my professional career, I'll share a little bit more of the story and then really talk about the mentors because it goes hand in hand. For me, once I did enter the financial services industry, I was the only woman financial advisor in my office out of 25 gentlemen. And there were 11 women in my training program on the whole East Coast at the time. And I did all my training at the World Trade Center. Within 1 year, I was the only woman left.
Oh,
So
my.
it was a very unique industry to start in. It was unique to be a young woman professional, but it was simply unique to be a woman financial advisor. So one of the things that I did that connected with mentoring was that I started a professional women's network very early in my career so that I could surround myself with other executive women who all had different areas of expertise. So we had one in medicine, one in law, one in advertising, one in psychotherapy, one in printing, 20 different disciplines. And so I founded that organization, the Professional Women's Network, had that for about 25 years, where one of the gals in the group basically really helped us get down to the more personal, authentic level. Instead of being women around a boardroom table, there was a little anecdote that we said we went from suits to souls. And that was really in terms of connecting with each other on a much more personal basis. And frankly, that is how business is done. When there is that personal trust, that personal connection, professional business
Totally.
can be done. So that was one of the first ways that I mentored and really collaborated and connected like-minded women. And so fast forward in my professional career, about 10 years into it, I was asked to become the sales manager in our office. And again, so that was unique because I was working with predominantly men. And one of the women in this group, although I was quite reluctant to consider taking that position, I was expecting my second child at the time. She really encouraged me. She happens to be a local judge today, and we're really incredibly proud of her professional success. And I'll never forget how we were able to collaborate together to be able to say, go ahead, take the position. You don't know what that might bring for your professional career, whether you do want to pursue a career in management or not. Give it a try. And it really was that encouragement for all of these gals to really work together. And so for me, mentoring that group was a tremendous first step. And then fast forward a number of years, I also created a second circle, which was executive women who chose to have families, because at that point in time, there was two different paths. People would call it, the executive track or the mommy track. And I wanted to do both. And so I felt
Absolutely.
very strongly about surrounding myself with a smaller group of women who wanted to focus on that. And we would meet for lunch, once a month and just share stories of the combination of being our authentic selves, really focusing and prioritizing our family first, but also wanting to be very competitive in the business world and looking at how we support each other in those two areas. So for me,
That's a
mentoring
very key
was really,
area because we both grew up in an era where I chose my career and had our daughter later. And so much of it was making a choice in the house or career. I was the first woman vice president of corporate communications. I was the only vice president in a very large international insurance conglomeration. So I know both of us have been firsts in many things. And balancing motherhood and balancing those careers was challenging, but we were able to do it. And I want to tell everybody here, you don't have to choose A or B. You can do it both. You can do it very successfully. I know I'm very close to our daughter. I know you were very close to your children. It's quality time and trying to find that balance. That doesn't mean that it's not difficult, right? Sometimes that
yes.
can be very challenging. But the other thing, and I really want you to weigh in on this, if you would, Elisa, are the lessons learned that children learn from both parents, not just mothers working, and we have fathers who are staying home and fathers, but and now with COVID, we've had situations where both parents have been home. So I think lots of times if we look at some of those as learning situations on what our children learn from our being in business as well.
Yeah, I think that is so critical. And I'm reminded of a couple of things that we encourage our children to come with us to a variety of different events. And so I recall bringing my son to the Fort Orange Club, for example, to hear one of the speakers. Bob Sampson was his name at IBM, one of the local leaders. And he was quite young at the time, but there are things that they're absorbing that you might not be aware of. And it might have been a little bit too early or it may not have been. And the same thing with our daughter, bringing her to all types of different events, whether it was award ceremonies, so she could see potentially in her future what types of events business-wise could be relevant for their own career paths. And I do recall our son's college essay, he actually incorporated meeting Bob Sampson at that event at the Fort Orange Club, and how impactful it was that at the young age, he was able to see business leaders who had both the business acumen, but the personal authenticity to be able to have those resources for them to call upon as now they're young adults later in their career. So many lessons learned. But truly, I think it's our job as parents, as professionals, to be their role models. We may not always win a popularity contest every step along the way with our children, but I think the key is that we need to have a conviction that it is fine to balance career and family. And I am truly proud that I honestly did never miss a soccer game or a dance recital or anything that either of the children were involved in, anything that was academic and anything that was social in their lives. I was very connected with them. And
And
to
that is
me,
so important too, being part of those, I love those school assemblies, all those school performances, as much as I
yes.
love taking Alexandra and making sure she was properly dressed, because there's a time to be casual and a time to be dressed. but
Yes.
also exposing, but being there for them and really developing their self-confidence, developing their self-esteem, aside from, of course, unconditional love.
Right.
Your kids have been doing some amazing things. So would you catch us up on what your children are doing now? Because I know they're doing
Sure.
wonderful things.
Thank you. Yes, indeed. So I'll share one story because I just think it's so heartwarming about my children. And then I'll touch on the professional parts. But when my son was in high school, we decided to take a trip after he graduated from high school, and he was going to Babson College. And I gave them the opportunity to say, we can go anywhere in the world, as a trip, as a family. Where would you like to go? So he chose Greece. And so I said, that's absolutely wonderful. We've never been there and love to go as a family, the four of us. And he asked if his girlfriend at the time could come. And I thought, okay, well, that's kind of an interesting dynamic, at that stage. And a lovely, lovely young lady who had never traveled outside of the country, whereas we had been traveling, ever since the children were young. And so I said, okay, that's fine. And we had a magnificent trip. It was just amazing. We went to Santorini and we went to Athens and, global history. It was just amazing. On the last evening there, our son came to me and said, I really would like to buy something before we head out. And I said, John, we've had a really great experience. Everything has gone perfectly well. Let's kind of call it a day. And he goes, no, Mom, this is important. And I stopped and listened. And I said, okay, what is it that you wanted to show me? And so we were walking down this little strip in the Oya village, and we went into a jewelry shop. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. And so bottom line, he goes, don't worry, it's fine. And so he had the older gentleman from the shop come out, and he said, can you please show my mom the necklace that I was looking at? And so I was like, oh, okay, great. And so he pulls out this little necklace, and it was about the size of a nickel. It was pewter with black etchings, and it had a little jagged edge down the center of it. And I thought, that's very unusual. And so he said, can you share with my mom how this works? And the older gentleman said in a very heavy Greek accent, he said, you buy this necklace for somebody very special to you, and you gently break it down the center and you give one half to that person. And so I assumed he was going to turn to his girlfriend and give her his girlfriend. And our son, who was heading off to college, turned to his younger sister, 4 years younger, and said, Rachel, I would like to give you this half of the necklace so you know how important you are to me for the rest of our lives. And at that moment in time, I was just so touched that in that moment that he knew the power of family, and he understood that, the girlfriend is a lovely, lovely young lady, but the reality is your sister, your family is forever. So it really just set a tone for their relationship. And he went to Babson College in Boston. And fast forward, when it came time for Rachel to choose the college, she was trying to select from Holy Cross, Villanova, and Babson. And she really did not want to go to the college that her brother went to because she wanted to forge her own path. I have two very independent-minded children.
Absolutely.
And at the end of the day, she ended up, John encouraged her to spend a weekend with him because he knew she was really struggling with that decision. And he didn't want her to make the decision just based on his experience. He wanted her to find her own voice, but that she needed more information to make that decision. So he ended up having her spend the entire weekend with all of his friends, watched him do a senior project in front of hundreds of other students and administrators and faculty. And she could see him shine. And literally at the end of the weekend, she came home and said, okay, I choose Babson. And so she did it on her own terms, but it was by his encouragement. So to me, that was just such a strong connection that they've always had. Fast forward a few years, Rachel graduated from Babson, absolutely loved it positively. It was an amazing experience for her personally and professionally. She's been out of school 2 years. I will say that she's working in the Boston area. And since she graduated in this job, she's had 3, I think the latest promotion was a 4th promotion, and she is now director of sales and marketing at a local real estate appraisal software development company for municipalities. And she's just doing remarkably well. Johnny is one town over, so they're about 20 minutes apart, and they do spend time on the weekends cooking together. They have a whole little passion project that they have focused on together as well outside of work. John is a chief product officer for a local climate change technology software company as well. That's a new position he just started recently. So what I love about my children is, number one, that they understand the relationship of siblings and how important that is for the rest of their lives. And this passion project on the side is a company that my daughter started that's called More Butter. And it is something that she calls nourishing my soul one recipe at a time. So it's just a fun project that the two of them, John encouraged her to do it. She gives a huge amount of credit to him. She puts all of his recipes and photos of food. He tends to be organic, vegan, free, very, very healthy. She's doing the baking. So it's kind of a unique partnership, but it's her passion project and it's been fabulous.
That sounds really wonderful. Now, our time is flying by here, so
Okay.
I want to touch on something because you have a very special talent
Mhm.
that has been passed to you from your parents, and now I know your children are also engaged in that. I recently saw a video of your mother,
Mhm.
who is, so tell us a little bit about the wonderful talents of your family.
Thank you. My parents met ballroom dancing in Brooklyn. My mother was an immigrant from Ecuador. She came to this country when she was 16 years old. She started working in the Brooklyn area to help raise money for her family. They came from modest means. And the reality is her sister encouraged her to go out to a ballroom dance. And my mother said, no, I just want to stay home and rest. And her sister encouraged her. Bottom line, she met my dad, who was a dance instructor at the time, and he's supposed to dance equally with all of the gals in the room. Well, he kind of took one look at my mom and they danced together for the next 54 years together. And it was truly
They
a
were
wonderful
exquisite
experience.
dancers. I had the privilege of seeing them on several occasions, plus most recently
Mhm.
seeing your
Ye-
mother
Yes,
dance at
indeed.
age 93.
Yes, indeed. And so fast forward, not only did my daughter start dancing at age 10 with the same age partner at Fred Astaire Dance Studios in Latham, where she had a tremendous experience. She went on to dance. Obviously, she went to Babson College. They did not have a ballroom team, so she ended up dancing on Harvard University's ballroom dance team for several years, competed at the gold level, did incredibly well. And then fast forward, my mom did have a very unique situation, in all honesty. 2 years ago, pre-COVID, went to visit my brother in Minnesota just for a week and went to see her beautiful 4 grandchildren there, and sadly took very ill and had emergency surgery, entered hospice. We
Oh my.
did genuinely say goodbye. We wrote her obituary. We planned her memorial service. The doctors were certain that it was her time. And we transitioned her to a phenomenal hospice residence in the state of Minnesota. She was there a day, 3 days, a week spot went by, months went by, and she made a full recovery. And so what is miraculously about my mother at 93 is doing this dance performance at the Mall of America with a dance instructor that I was able to connect with and basically have join us at Mall of America to perform. She had asked me to perform for her, and in turn, I felt it was really important to see if I could engage this dance instructor that she actually presented at her 90th birthday party here in the Capital Region, where she surprised all of us with an impromptu dance. And so I thought if we could duplicate that, 3 years later at Mall of America, there were tiers of people watching, hundreds cheering her on. And frankly, I did put the video on LinkedIn. She's
I
up
saw it.
over 10,000 views
Oh
of
my
my
gosh.
mom. And so I said, Mom, you're an internet sensation. And it really is just so delightful because it does show and prove the power of resiliency. You know, my mom survived typhoid fever twice when she was 16. All of her girlfriends passed away, but my grandmother was strong in that she wanted to care for her herself, and she was the only survivor of her group of friends. So it is a story of survival and thriving in all of our lives. And so I've been
You know,
very,
that
very
is so
fortunate.
true. The power of positivity. I call it
Yes.
PUP, power of positivity, but positivity, smiling and laughing. They
Yeah.
say so often, especially with people who are recovering, whether
Right.
it's cancer or different situations, a positive attitude. And the more that you laugh and stay actively engaged, that is really and truly the best healing. And we hear that all the time. And there's never a bad time to have a positive mindset and keep a positive attitude. But let me tell you, watching her was just such a marvelous example. Seeing the joy on her face as she
Yeah.
was doing these intricate steps. I'll tell you, if you haven't been part of the 10,000 people who have seen this, you have to go back and see this amazing woman doing this very intricate tango. So
And
I
it is,
know she has passed on
yeah.
so many gifts to all of
Yeah.
you. What is the best advice that you have ever received, Elisa, from anybody?
Right. I think the important part is, when I look back on my professional career and there was that turning point where I was asked to be the sales manager, and I ended up taking that position and I did it for a year. And interestingly enough, in that same year, I was asked by an older gentleman in the industry to take over his business. He'd been in the business for 3 decades. And so I felt privileged at the time to be the only woman in the financial advisor in the office and to be asked to really take over his business and to really help nurture his client base. And so at that time, because I was expecting my daughter, I felt it was important to hire a junior partner. And so I did. I found this phenomenal gal, and we ended up working together for the next 20 years together. But the reality is, shortly after I hired her to help me work with this very significant book of business, the older gentleman decided last minute that he was going to have his son-in-law come into the business instead. So I had already made this commitment to this junior partner, and it really was a rude awakening at that point in time to say, wow, okay, now I've made this commitment. Now we really need to just roll up our sleeves and work really hard. And we did it side by side with a strategic alliance. So for me, the advice is what my manager, Rob Salsby, used to tell me day in and day out. There's activity that you have to do and you have to track it. And you have to have, in my opinion, a written business plan. And that plan has to be incredibly detailed. And it has to be reviewed on a consistent basis. It has to be simple enough, but it has to be detailed enough. So I've had that same business plan that I have modified for 34 years. And it is critical to write it down, to review it, to be accountable, not only to yourself, but to the people that you're serving. I deeply care about the client families that we work with. We show that in our authenticity and working with them and caring about them and focus on all of the things that are important in their lives. But we have to do it in a business structured way that it is focused on the client, period, end of stories, everything that we do. So the advice is have a plan, have it written, follow the plan, modify the plan, and trust in the team of advisors that you surround yourself, whether it's professional women, professional circles of people. Most of the mentors that I have had have been men in my
And
life.
that
They've been
is
fabulous.
that is such great advice. Everybody, you need goals, but you need an action plan, time to do that, and keep moving forward. As Lisa is just talking about too, it's not how fast you do it. The key is to keep moving forward, keep your plan, and know and keep your vision moving forward. You know, Elisa, this time has been flying by. So, Elisa, I want to uh, say thank you from the bottom of our hearts from everybody at the YWCA of Northeastern New York. And as we all know, the YWCA is dedicated to eliminating racism, empowering women, promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. Elisa Quinn is such a vital part of our community. She is everywhere. She does everything with amazing heart. She does it with her full self. She is always all in. And that's why she is the amazing leader that she is. Elisa Quinn, on behalf of everybody from the Butterfly Effect in the YWCA, I want to thank you for being with us here today on episode 13, season 2 of The Butterfly Effect. I'm Sharon Burstein, president and CEO of Sharon Burstein International, and I know we wish everyone who is listening and watching this a great day. We'll see you later.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.